The loss of a child is something that no one can give verbal explanation to in a way that's the least bit comforting. And for a mother or a grandmother to lose a child, father or grandfather to lose a child, there's really no verbal expression.
Repeat the location and stand by.
54 clear, 1B1, stand by.
1285, repeat the location, no one.
1B1, okay, 7.
51, yes, stand by. 13, 20, meet 1285.
Tariq was kind of a magnet. You know, he always had this welcoming, humorous spirit. Still does, as I always say. Kids loved him, and I remember Tariq always had a lot of friends. So the house was always very full with his friends. And he's a very generous person, very kind, and cared a lot about his family. Also had a very good sense of humor. You know, I remember he would crack a joke even in the most serious situations, and was very loved. And essentially, and he says, you know, sometimes if you don't have anything else to give, you can give a person a smile and improve their day. But right in there, you could see the values that Tariq had were very inspirational, that give life your best, and he did. He lived by his values. And that was very apparent. And part of it is that when he refused to give up the pizzas, he stood by his values. He died on January 21st, and March 6th would have been his 21st birthday, which was a pretty tough day. It's a big birthday, the 21st, and we had big plans. Of course, it never happened.
The phone rang, and I answered it, and there was this young lady just screaming at the top of her lungs. And Tariq's been shot, he's killed, and he's laying in a driveway. And I did not believe it. And I said, that doesn't happen. And not 5 minutes later, my phone rang again, and it was the manager. And he said, it's true, Tariq's been murdered.
Tariq, who's working for DeMille's Pizza at the time, shows up with 2 pizzas. He knocks on several doors looking for the address. The address doesn't exist. And so, in frustration, he walks back to his Volkswagen Squareback, is about to put the pieces away when Tony and Antoine Pittman walk across the street. Tony brandishes the 9mm, says, "Give up the pizza." Tariq looks at Tony, gets in his car, and starts the car. Antoine Pittman says, "Bust him, Bone." Tony pulls out the gun, shoots, and the gun fires, hits Tariq in the chest, and gets his heart, and basically he bleeds out at the scene.
I ended up proceeding down to the restaurant, and I mean, it was just terrible. It was a terrible, terrible experience. It was sad. It was sad to see young people, 15, 16, trying to get their job done and not being able to work. And that's when the phone rang, and I had answered the phone because I kind of kept my wits about me, even though the police and the homicide detectives, everybody was already there. And when I heard Jennifer's voice, and she said, "Hey, Sal," and I said, "Hey, Jennifer, how are you?" She said, "Hey, I'm doing good." When she told me, Tariq's normally home at this time, and I told her to call back, and the next thing you know, I just went to start working with the homicide detectives because they were tugging on me. They had to know everything about Tariq. I'll never forget when I was sitting there after I gave them all the information I can give them, and that phone rang, and I stood up, and that homicide detective grabbed my shirt and he said, "Hey man, don't answer the phone." And when I told him, I said, "I know that's Jennifer on the other end of that phone. She needs to know that her fiance she's never going to see him or hear from him again." And when he told me that he had people trained to make that phone call, I'll never forget that phone just kept ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And that's why, to this day, it haunts me. When I hear the same ringtone, it brings me right back to that night when my friend was killed.
And I say I've never experienced pain like that. You know, I always say it felt like a nuclear bomb had gone off in my heart. And I remember leaving my body. And I left my body, and I believe I went in the loving arms of God. And He held me in an embrace for the longest time. And when the explosion subsided, He sent me back into my body with the vision that there were victims at both ends of the gun.